Have you ever wondered about those ancient mysterious books? You know, the ones often called grimoires, basically manuals of ceremonial magic, passed down through maybe secret societies, whispered about, promising to unlock hidden wisdom, maybe even command unseen forces. Texts that claim to hold the keys to knowledge that's, well, beyond our wildest dreams. Well, today we're diving headfirst into one of the most famous and, frankly, influential works of ceremonial magic, the Lesser Key of Solomon. It's also known as Lemegeton Claviculus Salomonis. We're drawing quite a bit from Joseph H. Peterson's critical edition, which has really, brought this fascinating material to light for a modern audience.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is really to unpack not just the historical context of this pretty complex grimoire and its different parts, but also to explore the sort of philosophical underpinnings of its magical practices. We'll look at how King Solomon, who's renowned globally for his immense wisdom, became so deeply associated with this powerful and sometimes controversial knowledge.
Well,
What does that connection tell us about the human quest for understanding and control? Blending science, religion, supernatural.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then.
Yeah.
What exactly is the Lemegeton at its core? How is it structured for those of us just getting into it?
Right. So at its heart, the Lemegeton is a collection of 5 distinct books of magic, and they're all famously attributed to King Solomon. A really foundational concept that these texts emphasize is this crucial distinction between Goetia and Theurgia. This wasn't just like a linguistic difference. It represented a fundamental philosophical divide for the people practicing this stuff. Goetia, it's a Greek term, generally means magic, but it carries these negative connotations. It refers specifically to magic working through unclean spirits. Theurgia, on the other hand, literally means working of a god, and it describes magic believed to operate through good angels and God. The compiler, whoever put the Lemegeton together, clearly recognized this difference. They saw these as 2 totally separate categories of spiritual interaction with, distinct moral and practical implications.
That's interesting. It sounds like they were creating a very structured, almost like a classification system for the supernatural. You mentioned 5 parts. What are they, and how do they kind of map out this spectrum of magic?
yeah, exactly. It's quite structured. The 5 parts lay out the spectrum. First is Goetia, then Theurgia Goetia, Ars Paulina, Ars Almadel, and finally Ars Notoria. Each one gives you a unique lens into these ancient magical systems. Now, studying old grimoires like this, it presents some significant challenges. A lot of manuscripts are fragmented or, frankly, corrupted. Peterson's edition is such a huge effort because it relies so heavily on reliable sources, mainly Sloan MS 3825 from the British Museum. And that's critical because other manuscripts, like say Harley MS 6483 from the early 1700s, show pretty big deviations. Or Sloan MS 2731, which is incomplete and just full of mistakes, really. And for the Ars Notoria part, Peterson actually had to depend quite a bit on Robert Turner's 1657 printed edition. So it just shows the complexity of piecing these historical works together.
Wow, yeah. It sounds almost like a detective story, piecing together knowledge from fragments scattered across centuries. And you find these intriguing connections too, right? Like some manuscripts having bits from Agrippa or Paracelsus. That really shows a kind of rich, interwoven history of occult knowledge. Ideas weren't just isolated, they were clearly building on each other. Okay, so let's turn now to Goetia. That's the first book and probably the most famous one, right? What's its purpose? What kind of entities are we actually encountering here?
Right, to Weyer. It's very specific. It details the names, the orders, the offices of 72 spirits that Solomon supposedly talked with. And crucially, it gives you their individual seals, their characters, and the exact rituals for calling them forth so you can see them. There's a really strong connection here to Johann Weyer's Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum, which was published back in 1563. Weyer's text, which he called Liber Officiorum Spirituum, it shares a similar list of spirits, but what's really fascinating is that Weyer's version, it notably lacks the demonic seals and all the elaborate rituals you find in the Lemegeton. Plus, the order of spirits in Weyer's list is so different, Peterson describes it as almost as if a stack of cards got scrambled. And the Goetia also adds 4 spirits that aren't in Weyer at all: Sago, Seer, Gantalion, and Andromalius. So that really highlights the unique evolution and the compilation of the Lemegeton over time. It suggests that while Weyer was maybe cataloging spirits, the Goetia system was actively developing practical methods for engaging with them.
I see. That lack of seals and rituals is a really key difference then. Can you maybe give us a sense of some of these spirits? Like, what kind of beings are we talking about? What could they supposedly do for someone?
Oh, certainly. The grimoire describes this huge array of spirits, often with incredibly vivid, sometimes monstrous forms. And each one is capable of fulfilling specific human desires or, fears. For instance, there's Baal. He's a king, appears with 3 heads, a toad, a man, and a cat. Speaks with a hoarse voice. And he's said to make men invisible and wise, commands 66 legions of spirits. Then you have someone like Asmodee, a powerful king, breathes fire, rides an infernal dragon, teaches things like arithmetic, geometry, astronomy. But the text warns the exorcist has to stand with his cap off when calling him, or his own king, Amayon, will deceive them. Little details like that. Or consider Seer. A mighty prince appears as a beautiful man riding on a strong horse with wings. His job is to go and come, and to bring all things to pass on a sudden, and to carry and recarry anything where thou wilt have it, in ye twinkling of an eye. So the grimoire details 72 entities like these. Some cause earthquakes, others reveal hidden treasure. It's a huge spectrum of perceived influence. What's really striking, I think, is how these incredibly vivid descriptions, they aren't just fantasy. They often reflect the psychological landscape of the time, projecting human fears, desires for power, maybe even societal anxieties onto these powerful beings that kind of embody both the mundane and the profound desires of the human heart, from invisibility to wisdom.
Right. So given how powerful and sometimes dangerous these entities sound, how does one even begin to try and command them? It must involve a really precise process.
Absolutely. Precision is key. The Goetia meticulously details the magical apparatus for these rituals, and the emphasis is heavily on protection and control. This includes things like intricate protective barriers. You've got the magical Circle of Solomon, which is 9 feet across, inscribed with divine names, and the Triangle of Solomon, placed outside the circle where disobedient spirits are commanded to appear. Practitioners also wore personal protective items, things like hexagonal and pentagonal figures on their vestments. And they held a magic ring in front of their face for protection from stinking fumes, as the text puts it. But maybe the most central item is the secret seal of Solomon. This is an intricate seal made on virgin parchment, with the blood of a black cock that never trode hen, specifically on Tuesday or Saturday nights when the moon is increasing in the sign of Libra. Very specific. This seal was believed to compel spirits into a brass vessel, but also grant love, ensure protection in battle, even making Solomon immune to weapon fire nor water. The sheer precision of these instructions, it really speaks volumes about the meticulousness and maybe the desperation of these early practitioners to make sure their operations were safe and successful.
Immune to weapon fire. Wow. That's an extraordinary claim. It really highlights the absolute power people must have attributed to the seal. And the conjurations themselves, I imagine they're just as intense.
Oh, absolutely. The conjurations involve these elaborate prayers and commands using powerful divine names like Jehovah Tetragrammaton, Adonai, Primaton. And if a spirit doesn't comply, well, there are constraint and curse sections. These outline really severe consequences for disobedient spirits, things like eternal fire and the bottomless pit. Serious threats. And to further try and ensure success and safety, the Goetia specifies particular hours to observe for binding these spirits, and these vary by the spirit's rank. Kings, for example, they could be bound from 9 p.m. to midnight, and then again from 3 p.m. until sunset. Dukes, though, were called from sunrise to noon, but only in clear weather. Counts or earls, interestingly, could be bound at any hour, but only in woods or other secluded, unpopulated places. This whole highly precise system, it really reflects a structured, almost scientific attempt to systematize and control the unpredictable forces of the unseen world.
Okay, moving on from the, let's say, the more infernal aspects, let's transition to Theurgia Goetia. This second book you mentioned is described as slightly less diabolical. It deals with aerial spirits, which are categorized as partly good and partly evil. How does this shift the focus?
It's a significant shift, yeah. It kind of occupies this middle ground. Theurgia Goetia shows really close parallels with Book 1 of Johannes Trithemius's Steganographia.
Yeah.
Now, Trithemius's text was written around 1500, but it wasn't actually published until 1608. It did circulate widely in manuscript form before that, though. This parallel is important because the seals described often match between the two texts. That gives us a valuable way to gauge the degradation or the authenticity of various Lemegeton manuscripts over time. It suggests a clear lineage of ideas, a shared understanding of these particular aerial spirits. These are 31 chief spirits, and they have their mansion, their sort of place of abode, at specific points of the compass, north, south, east, west, and the points in between. So to call them, the practitioner actually has to physically direct themselves towards that specific point. It adds this spatial, directional element to the ritual itself.
Huh. So it's not just what you say, but where you're standing and which way you're facing. Interesting. What does the ritual for calling these spirits involve? Is it similar to Goetia?
The method of operation is a bit different here. It involves calling these spirits into a crystal stone or glass receptacle, about 4 inches in diameter. This receptacle is then placed on the secret table of Solomon. The garments the operator wears, though, are the same as those used in Goetia, so there's continuity in their ritual attire. For a specific spirit like Pammersil, for instance, the text recommends a private or secret and most tacit roam in the house, so a very secret room, or an airy outdoor location. It highlights the importance of the environment and secrecy. The apparitions themselves, well, they can be quite vivid too. Burial's dukes, for example, are said to appear roguish and in the form of a serpent with a virgin's head and speak with a man's voice, and they're to be called only at night. Then you have Hydrill's dukes. They also appear as a serpent with a virgin's head and face, but they're described as very courteous and willing to obey, and they delight in waters and moist grounds. These descriptions really emphasize that moral ambiguity, these partly good, partly evil spirits. Requires careful interaction from the practitioner.
It's fascinating how, even within this partly good, partly evil group, there are such clear distinctions in their nature and appearance. Okay, next up in the Lemegeton is Ars Paulina. He said this one's divided into two parts. Angels of the hours of the day and night, and then angels of the signs of the zodiac. This sounds like a much more celestial focus.
It is, definitely. A really fascinating aspect here is this key concept. The nature and the offices, the jobs of these 24 angels aren't static. They actually change daily based on the planetary ruler of that specific hour. So, for example, take Samuel. He rules the first hour of the day, sunrise. If you call him on a Monday, his office aligns with the moon, because Monday is the moon's day. But if you call Samuel on a Tuesday, his office then aligns with Mars. This deep integration of planetary influence, it reflects a belief in a highly structured, interconnected cosmos, where the planets and stars directly impact things on Earth, including spiritual interactions. The text also gets very practical. It instructs you to make seals that are specific to the time of the operation, even giving an example seal made for the 10th day of March 1641.
Yeah.
That kind of grounds these abstract ideas in specific historical moment.
So it's a really dynamic system. The same angel could have different functions depending on the day's planetary energies. And I remember you mentioned Agrippa's influence here with a concept of a threefold demon. How does that fit into this angelic system?
Right. That brings us to a deeper philosophical connection, drawing from Agrippa, whose writings are actually abstracted in some of the manuscripts. This text suggests that a threefold demon attends every person. Now, it's really crucial to clarify. This isn't demonic like the Goetia spirits. Demon here carries its original Greek meaning, more like a guiding spirit or a divine power. So the idea is you have a proper keeper, which is holy and comes from God. Then there's a demon of the birth or geniture, which comes from the stars in your horoscope. And finally, a demon of the profession or calling, which actually changes depending on your career or path in life. It's quite a sophisticated view of personal spiritual guides, suggesting this complex, multi-layered spiritual support system for every individual. This also extends to what they called elemental angels, those linked to fire, earth, air, or water. Each category naturally has specialized knowledge related to their element. It just further emphasizes the granular detail of this cosmic architecture they believed in.
That's a really rich picture of personal spiritual guidance. What about the higher-ranking archangels mentioned? How are they described?
Yes, the text details the governing archangels and their associated zodiac signs and typical appearances. For instance, Michael governs the fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Observed on Sundays, he appears in royal robes, might be riding a lion or a cock, associated with red and saffron colors. Uriel governs the earthy signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Observed on Saturdays, appears like kings in green and silver robes, or sometimes as children or women who delight in hunting. Raphael governs the airy signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. Observed on Wednesdays, appears as kings or beautiful young men in robes of diverse colors, or sometimes as transcendently handsome women. And Gabriel governs the watery signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. Observed on Mondays, appears like kings in green and silver, or again sometimes as children or women delighting in hunting. There's also a significant emphasis on seasonal observation. Fire genii are best observed in summer, earthy in autumn, air in spring, and water in winter. This whole complex system, it highlights a deep reverence for celestial order and its perceived influence on earthly life. It provides a framework for understanding and interacting with these powerful beings. And crucially, their offices are to grant good requests, things that aren't against divine laws, mostly concerning protection of our life, our being and well-being. So it's focused on self-preservation and betterment, not really malevolence. Preparing to actually see your genius, your personal guardian angel, is a deliberate process. For the aerial genie, for instance, they're said to be able to reconcile natures, increase love, promote favor with kings, even secretly help marriages along. The operator is advised to prepare a suitable seal and have it confirmed by the genius, with the expectation of seeing wonderful and strange effects. It reflects this belief in active, benevolent spiritual help for life's challenges.
Okay, now let's shift to Ars Almadel. This part, you said, explains how Solomon gained great wisdom from the chief angels governing the 4 altitudes or corners of the world: east, south, west, north. This sounds like a very different approach again, focusing more on gaining divine wisdom rather than commanding spirits or even seeking personal guidance.
You're right, this section is a clear departure in focus. The construction of the Almadel itself is very specific. It's described as a tablet made of pure white wax, though other altitudes use colored wax. It's 4 squares, 6 inches in every direction. At each corner, there's a hole, and between these holes, specific names of God are written. Adonai, Hilomi, Pine for the east, Halon Heloi, Hel for the south, Jod, Hod, Agla for the west, and Tetragrammaton, Shaddai, Jab for the north. Then, in the middle of the Almadel, you find a pentacle and a 6-angled figure inscribed with the names Hel, Helion, Adoni. This very precise geometric and theological construction, it really underscores the sacredness and the focused intention of the ritual space they're creating.
It sounds incredibly intricate, the Almadel itself. What are the accompanying ritual elements needed for the Ars Almadel?
Yes, it comes with its own set of specific ritual items. 4 candles are made from the same wax and color as the Almadel itself, each with a little foot to support it. A golden seal engraved with Helion, Helujon, Adonai is also described as crucial for the operation. The angelic apparition itself is described quite vividly. The angels appear carrying a fan or a flag which has a white cross on it. Their bodies are wrapped in a cloud, their faces are very fair and bright, and they wear a crown made of rose flowers. They descend upon the Almadel as if it were a mist or fog. It creates this very serene, ethereal visual in the text.
So the angels appear like a gentle mist almost. That's quite a contrast to some of the Goetia descriptions. What happens during the interaction? How does the practitioner actually communicate with them?
The interaction is detailed too. The exorcist places an earthen basin containing a few hot ashes or coalesce and 3 little grains of mastic and powder underneath the Almadel. The idea is that the fume rises up to the holes in the wax tablet. The angel then speaks, apparently with a low voice, asking what the exorcist desires. The exorcist is instructed to respond with humility, asking only for what is lawful and just, unquote. If the angel doesn't appear right away, the instructions say to make 3 or 4 marks on the candles using the golden seal. And the angel's departure, fittingly, leaves behind a sweet and pleasant smell. This whole process highlights a very respectful, almost prayer-like interaction. It's about seeking divine wisdom, not imposing your will. What's also quite intriguing are the specific colors for the Almadel itself, depending on which of the 4 koras or altitudes you're working with. Lily white for the first kora, east, a perfect red rose color for the second, south, green mixed with white silver for the third, west, and black mixed with a little dark green for the 4th, north. And the angelic appearances kind of align with these colors and orientations too. The angels of the 2nd chora appear as a young child in red satin, face upwards. 3rd chora angels appear as children or little women in green and silver, faces downwards. 4th chora appear as little men or boys in black or dark green, holding a naked bird with ivy and berries around their heads. And there's a pretty powerful claim made about these angels. They could make any man rich or poor, suggesting that even this divine wisdom could be channeled for very practical earthly ends.
Interesting. Okay, finally, we get to conclude our deep dive with Ars Notoria. You describe this as the oldest book in the collection, a medieval grimoire focused on orations and prayers claiming to impart communion with God and instant knowledge of divine and human arts and sciences. Instant knowledge and wisdom, that is quite a promise.
It really is. This particular text, Ars Notoria, it seems to have a close relationship to another text called Liber Juratus, the sworn book of Honorius. It suggests maybe a common oral tradition for these kinds of powerful prayers aimed at gaining knowledge quickly. Older manuscripts of the Ars Notoria contain these exquisite drawings called notai, or figures. These aren't just decoration, they're actually symbolic representations of the orations or the arts themselves. Like the first grammar note is shown as an oration written in concentric rings. It effectively combines visual and textual learning, aiming for a profound, accelerated effect. These are referred to as the triumphal orations of the liberal arts. And the orations, they're supposed to be pronounced at specific determinate times of the moon, like the 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, 24th, 28th, and 30th day of the lunar cycle. This lunar timing again emphasizes that deep connection to cosmic cycles. The grand scope of what these orations promise is truly remarkable. They're said to manifest the eloquence and fullness of the four languages, Greek, Hebrew, Chaldee, and Latin, and also the four virtues of humanities, understanding, memory, eloquence, and the faculty of ruling those three. So this isn't just about magic in a narrow sense. It's aiming for comprehensive intellectual and spiritual mastery. It really highlights this consistent human yearning, doesn't it? The desire for accelerated learning and wisdom. You know, in an era before modern science as we know it, what was often perceived as magic was perhaps an attempt to systematize and access knowledge beyond the conventional, often arduous means. It blurred lines that we now draw much more sharply.
That desire for accelerated learning definitely resonates, even today. But with such powerful claims, I imagine there must be some pretty strict requirements for the person attempting this.
Indeed there are. The orations must be spoken secretly and alone,
Yeah.
with a low voice. The operator also has to fast the first day and maintain chastity and devoutly. It emphasizes this intense personal discipline for the practitioner, suggesting that such profound knowledge requires significant spiritual and physical preparation. You couldn't just casually do it. The incredible efficacy they attribute to these orations is just striking. They're believed to increase knowledge, memory, understanding, and eloquence to an extraordinary degree. They're referred to with these almost poetic titles like the happiness of wit, the light of the soul, the speculum mirror of wisdom, and even the image of eternal life. This reflects such a deep yearning for intellectual and spiritual enlightenment, viewing knowledge itself as a pathway to a higher state of being.
That's powerful, almost poetic language. But the text also includes a cautionary tale about King Solomon himself, doesn't it? What does that tell us about the reverence required?
Yes, it does. The text tells us that King Solomon himself, after seeing the forms of these notes or figures and having apparently overdrunk himself, incurred God's anger, and the consequence was a shortening of his kingdom in his children's days. It really underscores the serious nature and the potential consequences of misusing such profound knowledge, even for someone as wise as Solomon. It's a potent warning that even with the promise of instant knowledge, humility and sticking to divine law are absolutely paramount. The Ars Notoria outlines the 7 liberal arts that can supposedly be learned without sin using this method: philosophy, grammar, dialectics, which is logic argumentation, rhetoric, music, physics, theology, and astronomy. The text even details the number of notes or figures associated with the first 3. Grammar has 3, dialectics has 2, and rhetoric has 4, each with specific purposes. For example, the 2 notes for dialectics are for achieving eloquence in arguing and prudence in answering arguments. This whole concept of learning without sin, it suggests that these arts, when acquired through the Ars Notoria, were seen as divinely sanctioned and beneficial, distinguishing them from maybe more questionable magical pursuits found elsewhere.
So it's not just about what you learn, but how you learn it and the moral implications that come with it. That's fascinating. How are these notes actually supposed to be inspected and the orations recited in practice? Is it detailed?
Oh yes, the instructions are highly specific. For the dialectical notes, for instance, you're instructed to look into them 4 times a day, and their associated orations are to be repeated 20 times daily. And you should have books of the art, like logic textbooks, present while you do it. There are even specific months considered more profitable for studying certain arts, like theology and astronomy are best studied when the sun is in fiery signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, grammar and logic in Gemini or Virgo. This deep intertwining with astrological timings just further demonstrates the holistic, highly structured worldview these practitioners held. Everything was connected. But what's particularly fascinating is the section called the Ars Nova, or New Art, within Ars Notoria. It offers a powerful degree of flexibility. These specific orations can be said before studying all arts generally, and before using all the notes specially without having to observe the specific times, days, or lunar phases mentioned earlier. This marks it as particularly potent, suggesting it's maybe a kind of master key to gaining great efficacy in any art, one that transcends some of the stricter ritualistic constraints found in other parts of the text.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've taken through the Lesser Key of Solomon. I mean, from commanding these monstrous entities and invoking aerial spirits to conversing with celestial angels for instant knowledge and profound wisdom. It's a truly unique blend, isn't it? Practical, almost cookbook-like instruction mixed with deep theological frameworks and just this enduring human fascination with the unseen world.
It really is. And it leaves us with perhaps a provocative thought to consider. These comprehensive systems of magic blending spiritual aspiration, what they saw as scientific observation, philosophical inquiry, deep devotion, they were meticulously documented and genuinely believed for centuries. What does the enduring human quest for this kind of absolute knowledge, this perceived shortcut to power and understanding, tell us about our own deep-seated desire?
Yeah.
Our desire to understand and maybe even control our world and ultimately perhaps control ourselves, even today.